Social media can be a hellscape. It's got a lot of value, but sometimes you really gotta wade through a lot of brain rot to actually make it to that value. We flame older Aussies for falling for everything they see on Facebook, but young people on TikTok are no better. People hear the same formulaic videos, listen to someone say some big words, and suck up that slot with zero consideration of whether there's any actual evidence or theory to support it. Ozpil, wherever he went, was actually a good example of this, where almost every single one of his videos was a straight manipulation of statistics, and people clung to his messaging despite the fact that there was even public evidence that he was purposely trying to sell an agenda. It didn't matter though, because people just like hearing what they want to hear. People don't go on social media because they want to be challenged. People want to hear exactly what they already believe. They want to be smarter, hotter, or better than the average person. And anyone who disagrees with them doesn't even deserve to breathe the same air. That cycle of algorithmic pleasure seeking and bias doesn't just create an issue in political spaces, but also how people see their lives and bodies generally. It can destroy people's mental health and perception of the world. This is a huge problem, not just for adults, but also children. And as such, Australia passed legislation to ban social media accounts for those under 16 because of the growing evidence that social media is destroying young people's mental health and overall development. So, will it work? But is it a good idea? Now that's a more complicated question. The theory behind the ban is that social media is horrific for children's mental health and development. You don't want children exposed to adult content, which unfortunately is rampant online, and you don't want young people becoming vulnerable to cyberbullying, extremist content, or online predators. In this age of anonymity, there is only one real way to guarantee children aren't exposed to that content, and that's to make sure they can't get near it. You don't stop children gambling at casinos by only allowing them to watch the pokies, you outright ban them from entering the room. The big names that are almost guaranteed to be are X, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and Reddit. Right now, messaging apps, online gaming services, and servers with the primary purpose of supporting the health and education of end users are excluded, but consultation is planned later in the future. I think these specific bans make sense. There is no reason that someone under the age of 16 needs to be on X, which has effectively become overrun by genuine Nazis, is filled with adult bots, Grok glitching out and becoming Mecha Hitler, and creating fantasies about sexually assaulting users. Facebook is filled with the classic misinformation and disinformation it became famous for, but it's not really the way young people get their news anyway. The core issue with Facebook is that adults can easily access information about children's real name, ages, and potential locations if those children aren't taught the importance of cybersecurity. Posting a selfie in a school uniform or checking in with friends at a Westfield or somewhere instantly lets adults know where they're going to be. Westfield, is that accurate? I don't know, bro. I'm 25. I don't know where children hang out. There's a risk there, and children should not be given the option to even make that risk. Children being able to view attractive celebrities or influencers 24/7 on Instagram is only going to destroy their perception of themselves and the world as a whole. And similarly to Facebook, constantly posting pictures about yourself, your friends, and your whereabouts is really unsafe when adults are able to access that information. Adults should not be able to access the photos and information about children so easily, and through Instagram, they can. Snapchat is the #1 app used for child grooming. That should speak for itself of why that deserves the ban. And TikTok is rife with misinformation, causing the same self-perception issues in Instagram, and again allows adults to access accounts of children. Reddit similarly falls into this misinformation trap, with children also able to access content that is definitely not developmentally appropriate. More recently though, YouTube is being considered to be included in the ban, and it's created a lot of worry. I'm not actually sure why though. Let's be very clear about what this ban actually is though. It is a ban that stops children from the age of 16 from making an account. What that means is X, Facebook, Instagram, and Snapchat are effectively eliminated from use, which is a win, but Reddit and YouTube are almost entirely accessible without an account anyway. Not saying that's a bad thing, but it doesn't really actually resolve that issue per se. Positively, in the case of Reddit, if you can't make an account, a lot of those not safe for work or 18+ subreddits aren't available, but the website as a whole still is, and there is still a significant amount of content that isn't age-gated, but still wouldn't be appropriate for a teenager to be engaging in. YouTube has a similar issue. They have a built-in age restriction for videos, but there's a lot of content that gets past that age restriction, or a lot of videos that end up being misinformation, disinformation, or all in all exploring adult themes that children should not be exposed to isn't explicitly 18+, and children are still going to be able to access that content. Children not being being able to make a YouTube account is a win in the sense that the algorithm can't slowly start putting people down this extremist or developmentally inappropriate algorithmic hole, but overall, they can still find that content if they were looking for it, or if someone was sending it to them. I think it would be worse in the long run to outright ban anyone under the age of 16 from accessing Reddit or YouTube at all, but I think it's important to note that the strategy they're employing still has a significant amount of flaws. Further that, I think banning children from being able to play games online makes zero sense whatsoever. I think that's a really, really good thing for children to be able to do. But the fact that this ban doesn't really tackle any of the issues when it comes to grooming in games like Roblox, or any of the extremist or intense content you're going to see from some online communities in gaming spaces, this doesn't actually really resolve the issue whatsoever for that side of the internet. And my assumption is the government probably doesn't even know these parts of the internet exist. The reasonable next question is, okay, despite all the flaws, we think that it's a good thing to try and get anyone under 16 off social media. How do we do it? Face scanning is the hot idea being floated around. Throw the term AI next to it and all of a sudden it's a billion-dollar company if you ignore the fact that the technology doesn't really work. The technology is not accurate enough to be relied upon, and really the only other alternative is having some form of verifiable digital ID system accessible to these social media companies. Now, I understand that these software companies already have every bit of information on me they could possibly want, but it still feels weird to have to upload my driver's license to every single social media I use just to prove I'm over the age of 16. This further becomes a problem if someone's trying to make an anonymous account, which does have utility. Yes, with rights become responsibilities, and we see a lot of these anonymous accounts spread really intense or extremist rhetoric, but at the same time, plenty of young Australians or teenagers create these anonymous accounts to figure out their gender or sexual identity, or engage in communities because they don't really feel like they have a space to belong. I understand the risks and the flaws by allowing people to have anonymous accounts, but I don't think throwing the baby out with the bathwater is the right solution either. All of that said though, our sports betting apps already require us to upload some form of identification to prove we're over the age of 18. So most typical Aussies don't really care that much, and clearly it does work. So you know, it's not that big of an issue, but it feels a little bit weird, and I don't think the Face ID stuff is going to actually work. I think children should have unmitigated access to the internet. I think overall, children being able to access social media has done so much developmental harm for society as a whole. I think it's incredible that Australia is taking a stance in trying to protect our children. The internet is much better in some ways and a lot worse in other ways compared to when I was using it and growing up. But I definitely worry about what children are being exposed to, because I remember what I was exposed to. Like an infinite number of dudes who grew up in the 2000s, I was watching the Ben Shapiro wrecked videos and saying some wild stuff on Counter-Strike or TF2, making the way too edgy jokes and doing the, oh, it's just words, man, because I was an idiot, cringe, had no perspective, and spent a lot of time online where people who were either my age or potentially significantly older could just say or do anything with no consequences, and it became normalized. I think it's normal for teens to have this edgy phase and experiment with like dark humor and just trying to figure out who they want to be. But it's a lot better when that's happening in the real world where there are real life consequences and you're held accountable, compared to doing it in these online spaces where people are just egging you on and you're potentially around some people who actually hold really extremist beliefs. I can't think of times in the real world I've heard people hurling slurs at each other, but back when I used to play games online, that's all that was happening. It becomes normalized. Children need to be protected from those spaces because we don't want it to become normalized, or in some cases internalized. As a teenager, you're finding out the difference between right and wrong, what's an edgy and funny joke that can provide some catharsis versus what's actually just potentially extremist, racist, or insensitive. I think it's fine to learn those lessons, but social media is the worst possible place you could be learning those lessons. Those lessons should come with interacting with real people in your life. Making mistakes, even really bad ones, like a pretty edgy, borderline straight up just prejudicial joke, is pretty developmentally normal, but the thing is, you should kind of experience shame for that. You should learn, oh, this was the wrong thing to do, and then you can learn from it, you can apologize, you can take it on, and you can move forward in your life. The issue is when people do it online, there are two extremes. One group who goes, man, that was so funny. Hey, by the way, have you read this book? I notice everyone's being pretty mean to you. And another group of people who will screenshot it and then try and wait to the moment you have any success or want to go to university and try and ruin your life with it to hold you accountable. Mistakes are permanent when they are posted online, and children should be protected from that. They should not be allowed to make these types of mistakes on an online space. It can destroy their mental health and perception of the world and perception of themselves. I think kids should be kids, and part of being a kid is exploring the world, making mistakes, developing new ideas about yourself, and having adults try and co-opt these children into their political systems or belief systems or facilitating any type of cyber abuse or extremist content just isn't acceptable. Social media has allowed children and adults to interact much more frequently than they ever would in the real world, and I think that is potentially dangerous for everyone involved. I think banning kids from making social media accounts is an incredible step in the right direction, and the Albanese government should be proud and get the credit they deserve for it. But hey, come join the Discord, come talk about it, come say hi, come let me know what you think in the comments, like and subscribe, let me know if you disagree. It's been real.